Welcome to the Happy Stack podcast, where we explore the science and strategies behind creating a happier, more fulfilling life. I'm Terri-Ann Richards, and I partner with organizations to address the root causes of burnout, disengagement, and stress, equipping leaders and teams with the tools they need to thrive, both organizationally and personally. Each episode, we dive into practical habits, insights, and strategies to help high performers like you level up from the inside out. Let's get stacking. Rosemary, welcome to the Happy Stack podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Terri-Ann. It's great to join you.
So I wanted to sort of jump right into this and kind of get a sense of, I want to hear about the work you're doing right now. Like, what's lighting you up and why does it matter to you?
Well, really, at the moment, I'm sort of in a transitional phase. So I started off as a mediator for the family court, and that was where I was able to help separating parents reestablish their roles and responsibilities towards each other now that they're separated. And through that, I guess, I was able to learn a lot about human behavior and why some people are able to overcome their challenges in what appears to be a smoother way, while others are more overcome by their personal crisis and challenges. So that sort of led me to then look into the meaning behind human behavior, looking at child development and a little bit into, child trauma and healing from trauma, and led me to write a self-help book, which is now really going to be my main focus, where I run workshops and author talks to really share the concepts, to share what I learned as a family mediator.
So if you were to take maybe one concept, one idea that came from the book, and please share what that book title is, what would be that concept that you could share with our audience?
Okay. The book's called It's Not You, It's Me, A Chronic Overthinker's Guide to Self-Reflection.
Beautiful.
And it's, the main concept really draws on the strengths-based theory that I began studying and became interested in when I was looking into the meaning behind human behavior. And using this theory, it really classifies everything that we do, we see how we respond to external stimulus as coming under either what's wrong or what's strong. And just using these very simple ways to classify our thoughts, feelings, and actions can help us really give a starting point. So using these categories to classify our thoughts, feeling, and action can help give a starting point to self-reflection. And I guess the goal is to also transform anything that would be sort of really negative, heavy thoughts, overthinking into reflection and an opportunity for personal growth and an opportunity to then see a mistake as a learning opportunity.
Wonderful. So I know you call yourself a chronic overthinker. I think a large percentage of people could probably relate to that title. What was the turning point for you to, I guess, maybe the catalyst to help you decide that this was the book that you wanted to write? Because I'm assuming it's birthed from what you saw in your workspace, but also it sounds like it was also birthed from sort of your own personal experiences.
Yes, it really was. And the book, as it is now published, wasn't always in that form. The original book that I wrote was a fiction, and it was about a chronic overthinker. And then I used the concepts that are in my book to help describe what the main character was doing. And the last chapter of that book was a self-help book, which then goes into the strengths-based approach and the tool that I propose in my book now. And I guess what I realized is that I couldn't have a non-fiction and a fiction in one book. And so I decided to rewrite the last chapter as the whole book.
Okay. So what are some practical steps someone can take when they notice that they are, maybe spiraling, going into that little tornado of those unhelpful thought loops of overthinking?
Well, I think one of the sort of simplest ways is to use this classification of what's wrong or what's strong. And now there's a lot of ways of thinking and being that can come under either. But when we're in what's wrong mode, it feels heavier. And there's a tendency to then, fill in the gaps with a lot of judgment, whether or not it's self-judgment, judgment of others, or even jumping to, negative conclusions or judgmental conclusions. There can be a lot of criticism, and it's harder to move forward when we're in that stance because we're worried about things that happened in the past, that they might be repeated, or we're fearful that we're going to make another mistake, or we beat ourselves up because we did make a mistake. So when we're in that mode, and the way we feel can also be a clue, then that can be a trigger to sort of say, okay, how can I flip this to what's strong? Or even just that awareness is enough. The other day I was walking down the street and I was thinking about something very trivial, but it suddenly occurred to me that every thought I was having came under what's wrong. And and I thought, oh, wow, it's so easy to go down that path because, for many, it's the default, and even for little things. So it just stopped me. That awareness just stopped me because it's not about necessarily being always on the path of what's strong and being positive and always learning from the mistakes. It's more about that awareness of the times that we haven't. And then that's where the growth comes.
It certainly sounds to me that what you're speaking to really is underlaced by EQ, emotional intelligence, right? That self-awareness piece. And, I certainly understand from my own work that EQ is a really strong indicator of success, of happiness, of growth. But it's sort of like a lot of the human skills that we call soft skills, which I don't know why we call them soft skills, but it's a lot of those human skills that require you to build them over time. And so what you're saying is to move from what's wrong to what's strong, the first step is really self-awareness, which for some folks is going to be difficult because self-awareness it's just not natural for all individuals. So how can someone begin to develop that skill set, that human skill set of becoming aware of, am I focusing on what's wrong versus what's strong, what could be all possibilities, opportunities?
Yeah, and that's a really great point. And I guess why in my book, the way that I've written it, I layer the concepts and include reflection tasks. There's, over 30 reflection tasks within the book to help really digest, one piece at a time, and for readers to then use their own scenarios in the task so that it's relatable and relevant and also at their own pace. So, I say that there is this, just hearing this, what's wrong and what's strong, sometimes that can be the starting point, And the other thing about what I'm proposing is that where there has been, significant trauma, then it might feel like 2 steps forward, 10 steps back, and be a much slower process where, it might be where the default is the what's wrong path. And it's quite ingrained, and even ingrained in terms of the way that I view myself. My default to view myself is in the what's wrong lens. So it can be more challenging, and awareness is great, but it's also about then tapping into, I guess, the various parts that form a human being. I guess not just about the thoughts, it's also the feelings, it's also the action. What can we do in terms of our thoughts, feelings, and actions that help support this growth? And some of it might look like self-care. I talk about ways that we can build our own habits or routine, which would come under interactions with ourselves that focus on what's strong, because they can help build that part of us and give us evidence, or new evidence for some, because the old evidence perhaps was constantly on what's wrong. So if we do things for ourselves that give us evidence of what's strong, and simple things, like for me, I'm a big note taker, not just a note taker, but I use to-do lists. And so, I actually got on a podcast and said that this to-do list makes me happy. And in preparing for that and speaking about it, I realized that it's not the actual list that makes me happy. It's how I feel about myself. I feel accomplished. And even if there's things that I don't get done on that list, then I put it on the list for the next day and I do it again and I've ticked off.
So you like checking off lists?
Yes.
Yeah, like 100%. I'm with you with that, because I don't know who else can relate to this, but I am the kind of individual that if I have a list going over here to the left and I just did a task, but somehow it wasn't on the list, I write it on the list just so I can check it off.
I do too. But essentially, we're having interactions with ourselves that focus on what's strong. And so there might be external stimulus that focuses on our negative and makes it harder for us to see the strengths in ourselves. But there are a whole range of routines, activities, or habits that we can form ourselves that help us focus on what's strong. And what that happens is that we are then building on our sense of self. And the way I see our sense of self is it's how much we believe in ourselves. So this helps us, this gives us evidence as to why we should believe in ourselves. And it could be any sort of practice that you can do that works for you. It could be some form of creativity, any outlet that gives you evidence of your strengths. That's, I guess one thing that anyone can do, and it's not dependent on a third party or paying for a membership, or it might be, but, it doesn't have to.
So let's play this out. Let's kind of look at this in terms of, because I know a lot of times for anybody to do something, try something, it's sort of like, well, what's in it for me? Like, what is the actual gain here? If I start looking at my world in terms of becoming aware and switching from the what's wrong to what's strong, and you're not talking toxic positivity here, so just in case anybody wanted to comment and throw that out at me, that's not what we're talking about here. And then building up those habits and those muscles of starting to see where potentially you flourish and thrive. What's the long game here? Like, what would be if I am, a professional in, what I would consider my chosen career, a leader, an entrepreneur? What's the outcome of me starting to put this into practice? What's the gain for me?
Well, it's really about how much you believe in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, then it's easier then to handle adversity or challenges when they do come up, because they do. So this is building on that resilience. And it's also building on your ability to then turn a mistake into a learning opportunity. So rather than spend a lot of time beating ourselves up, and maybe we still do, but then we get over it and we're able to move past and say, okay, I had to do that time, but now what have I learned and how can I implement that in my future and what I do moving forward? And I guess the last point I would note about the benefit of this and how it builds your sense of self and your ability to believe in yourself, then when you have a goal or a dream, there's something that you've been wanting to do or you're planning to do, and you tell other people about it and they give you evidence why it won't work. They start telling you what's wrong with it, then because you believe in yourself, that doesn't matter. It doesn't have as big an impact.
Those naysayers, that's what they are.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. I've had a lot of naysayers in my life. And I think it's interesting. I speak about that actually in my book, Success Takes Courage. And one of the things I talk about is that a lot of people speak from their own experiences, right? And so if somebody's never, taken care of or fixed a toilet, for example, and you're like, I'm going to fix my own toilet, I'm going to do the thing. And they're just like, that's the gnarliest idea ever. I can't imagine that you could do that. You should hire a plumber, da 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 da. That's them speaking from their own experiences, their own environments, their own fears, and what they believe, to your point, that they are capable of. And so I think one of the things I would encourage people to do from what you're saying is to also be mindful of the rhetoric or the verbiage you share with other people, because as much as we don't want naysayers in our lives, a lot of times we can be naysayers in others' lives based on what we believe is possible for us. We then kind of put that cloak, if you will, onto other people, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And that's also, I guess, another point that I refer to in my book. So we've got what's wrong and what's strong, but there's also two characters, the self and the other. And the other is really anything external. It doesn't have to be a person. And I talk about in terms of where are we placing the spotlight. So what you've just explored is really resonated with me in terms of the self and the other. Where is the spotlight?
I like that. Okay. So here's what I want to do. I want to flip the switch a bit and just speak a little bit more about you as a human. Because I think, a lot of times when we have experts and individuals that are really good in the work that they do, we focus a lot on the work, right? And their expertise. And I think all of that has validity. But at the end of the day, I like to learn about what makes people tick and what is the thing that has helped to shape them and define them. And also, what are they doing to, improve their resilience and to stack their happiness? Because I think that matters. And we learn from each other in those, breaths of moment, if you will. So I'm curious to sort of ask you, what would be that one defining moment in your journey, however long back you want to go, that really shaped who you are, and maybe even more so shaped who you've become?
Well, I would say it was when I started working as a mediator. So because up until that point, I had been in positions that really weren't for me. And so essentially what they did was they gave me evidence of my weaknesses And they showed me that I had to be like someone else, or I should apply for a promotion or, skill up so that I could be better, so that I could get better. And the inference was that I wasn't good enough. And that was really the style of management as well. And it could have also just been my view, my perspective, that I believed I wasn't good enough. So therefore, I saw everything else through that light. But when I became a mediator, I was working in an organisation that prided itself on its strengths-based approach. So I was given evidence of my strengths. And it was the first time ever in my working life that I had experienced this. And so I was giving evidence of my strengths. I was given clients that, the manager felt would really work well with me. I was given opportunities, professional development that would help to upskill and also highlight my own skills. And so it was new for me. But what it did was it was evidence of why I should believe in myself. And I started believing in myself. I guess it followed on to then me writing a book about my work and basing it on a strengths-based approach. The tool that I propose is all about being strengths-based.
It's so interesting to me because I think of our school systems, right? And I know you're over in Australia and I'm over here in Canada, but I'm going to assume it's a lot of the same, where we focus a lot on the gaps and weaknesses. And so, as someone is sort of birthed into adulthood outside of primary school and college and university, that becomes our focus, right? Because that's almost how we've been conditioned our whole life. And it's not until somebody has, sort of like what you have, that aha moment of like, wait a minute, if all I focus on is, where these areas where that sort of points out where I have these pretty strong gaps, or I'm potentially in a wrong fit, you don't feel overly fulfilled. You don't feel like you're on the right trajectory. Whereas if you can flip the switch just a tad to focus on those areas that you do thrive and that you do flourish and that you do have opportunity to continue to grow, that sort of gives you that catalytic moment of, okay, like I can do this and I also can continue to grow in this, which I think is such a different perspective that, I just don't believe exists a lot in our shaping of our youth. And it's something I can see as that if somebody ever wanted to like take the torch and make some big changes, I think those are the areas where we could really make a change, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess that's why I'm running workshops in high schools to really teach students. Yeah, to show students there is another way.
That is huge. Okay, so you're talking about young people. So let me just ask this question because I always like asking this question. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, like she's standing right there on the other side of the mic, and you have you got one piece of advice, and then the whole thing goes boop, and then you can't speak to her no more. So what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say just to have faith.
Faith. Describe what faith means to you.
I guess I say faith in terms of faith in myself.
Okay. Faith in yourself.
Just believe in yourself.
That belief.
And stand. Yeah, believe in yourself and stand tall. Yeah, it goes to that belief. Believe in yourself and stand tall.
I love that.
It's all going to work out.
I think you need this on a t-shirt, just saying.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're at that point. I have heard a similar word a few times throughout this interview that I'm like, I think you might be at the point where you need to put this on a t-shirt. Like when you go and you're doing your workshop and you're doing your training and you're standing in front of your high school students, pretty sure this should be on a t-shirt.
Yes. I'll organize it.
There you go. Yeah. And I would like one as well, when you have that ready.
Cool. Yeah.
So what's one habit or ritual that you have in your day-to-day life that helps to bring you joy?
I guess one ritual that I do is a morning and an evening meditation. Okay. And I guess what it's done for me is, number one, it's given me routine, but it's also me taking time for myself. I see that it's getting late now in the evening. I better do my practice. And sometimes I do a yoga nidra and have it on a recording or from an app and listen to it. And it just helps me sort of wind down. But it's also helped me even with my sleep habits because I don't sleep well. It's really hot. And so for me to then say, okay, I better start winding down, that's really helped me just to sort of close the day, to relax and spend that time on me rather than just being all sort of worked up from the day and tired and just going to bed. Yeah. And then even when I wake up, this morning, I did just a little meditation, kind of setting the intention. I'm getting up, going to speak with Terri-Ann. Let's just flow into the day. And what I noticed is that when I meditate consistency, I become less reactive and more responsive. And when I don't meditate, I am more reactive.
So 2 things to point out for anyone who's listening or watching. Rosemary is 11 hours before me. So she is up at like the butt crack of dawn right now, hanging out with me. And I am like ready to eat supper. So just put that into some context, folks. So dedication is there. My second point, this one's actually a question, is what's meditation to you? Because I find as I've been doing these podcast interviews, and it seems to be coming up a lot, that a lot of y'all are meditating. So I'm going to get on board. I struggle with meditation. What kind of meditation do you like? Are you listening to guided? Are you just humming, or like, what is it? What do you do?
Well, it's a bit of all of that, because it really depends on what's resonating with me. Because I mean, I've been meditating for at least 20 more years, and it's always changing.
Okay.
Because I see meditation as exercise. So it's the same as going to the gym or going for a walk. And it builds up the parts of your brain that will aid that perspective taking, that reflective process, emotional regulation, and tones down the parts that will then manage stress and anxiety, or anything that will make it easier for us to go down the path of what's wrong. So
that was the best explanation of why I should meditate ever.
Okay, great.
That was really good. Now, do you use an app, or you just like literally just
I do have an app.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an app that I use, but sometimes I just do my own sort of visualization based on what I want to achieve or how I feel for that day. I mean, even in my book, I have some meditations and visualizations, and one of them is, I call it an infusion, and it stems from, I have to have iron infusions. Well, I went through a stage, I was having iron infusions regularly, like strength, like courage, like love, anything that we want to bring into and embody in our day. So this became a morning practice where as soon as I wake up, I visualize the sun rising. And as it rises, the sun sort of hits me from my feet and slowly goes up to the top of my head, and it infuses me with whatever quality I want that day. And if I've got a bit of a sore, I'll let sun rays warm up and, stay a little bit more in that place.
Wow.
And that was
pretty cool. Okay.
But it could be anything. It could be walking. It could be a walking meditation. It's anything that helps you reduce the clutter in your head.
Yeah. And I find that interesting because I'm really good at visualization when it comes to business, but I love your idea of, taking that process and doing it for, like, I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed today. So, I'm going to visualize, the wind coming towards me and pulling all the goodness of Mother Nature and like whatever works for you, but you're just sort of, you're visualizing that, what I would say, good juju coming towards you and helping to heal or helping to improve and all of that. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So would the flip of that be, if you're feeling really overwhelmed or really stressed, like what is your go-to practice for that? Would it still be meditation, or would there be something else that you would do?
Well, it could be, but sometimes when I'm in that overwhelm mode, it's really hard to sort of get into the meditation.
Yeah, because you're on the roller coaster at that point.
Yeah. So I say meditation is something to practice consistently to help when we are in those phases, I guess, or those challenges. It could also be, but, when we're in that phase, it might be that we sit down for 5 minutes and there's only 30 seconds or 1 minute where we sort of had clarity. And that's still fine because we can embrace and applaud that moment there. But for me, getting out and going for a walk, going to a park, or, getting out in nature and sort of detaching from whatever it is that's the concern. Sometimes even just taking a bath or a shower can help. Or if you're someone that writes, sometimes writing it out, what I'm worried about or what I want to achieve, and I mean, this word overwhelm comes up. Sometimes I use this concept of using opposites. If we're in overwhelm, then we're not in the opposite of overwhelm. So that then gives us the goal, and whether or not we have a specific word for it or whatever resonates with you, then that can be our goal. How can we move? I'm just trying to think what would be the opposite of overwhelm.
Sort of like in harmony, right? Like the opposite of overwhelm would be like in harmony, or because I hate the word imbalance, but like in harmony or, Yeah, in harmony.
So then we can think about, well, how can we bring more harmony? What can I do to bring harmony to the situation and to myself? And because everybody's different and everyone has different ways. The overwhelm is under what's wrong. So how can we move towards what's strong in our process? And, as a mediator, but one of the first things that I say to my clients, and it's really pivotal, is my role here is not to judge or take sides or give an opinion. So I'm there to facilitate the conversation, and neutrality and non-judgment is key. So how about we try to be our own mediator in this process? So when we are trying to shift from overwhelm to harmony, how can we show non-judgment to ourselves in that process and non-judgment in the way we think about it?
But I also love how you're sort of like looking at overwhelm and the opposite of it. I actually feel like that's a good practice for individuals when you're sort of stuck in the what's wrong sort of hole, if you will, and look at, well, what's the opposite that I would want to be true? Right, of whatever's going on, that's the ick, because sometimes there just is ick, it just exists, right? What's the opposite? And then what are the things within your control that you can do? It gives you a lot of your power and autonomy back, because there's actually movement that you can make. And I think a lot of times for people, just to feel good about what's happening is to be able to know what it is they can do. Like, what choices do I have right now? And even if it's that one little step can help them probably get out of that spiral of what's wrong, which is feeling completely powerless and unable to take a step in any direction, right?
Yes. And one of the reflection tasks in my book is sort of based on, well, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, what's the opposite? The opposite is harmony. Why is that important to me? And just keep writing and keep asking. It's harmony is important to me because, and then, well, that answer, why is that answer important to me? And you sort of unravel this really deep meaning that generally goes towards someone's morals and values. And then you can almost have a sense of pride. Well, I can understand why I'm overwhelmed because there's this at stake or that's being challenged. And they're really important and really honorable parts of me.
Yeah. So tell me if you have an answer to this question, because I'm always curious about it. What's something you've learned about yourself recently? Like just some that's new.
Well, I don't know if it's so new, but I guess I've learned how easy it is for me to step into what's wrong, but that sort of acknowledging it and staying less there and then learning from it has become much quicker.
Your get up to get speed is much quicker than probably it was before because you've got the framework to follow.
Yeah. I mean, in certain parts of my life, there are other parts of me where it might not be as quick because maybe there's some more meaning or more experience or whatever in that area. But generally, I wrote a book about it, but it's so hard. It just shows me
that we're human,
I guess. That we're human and that it's okay. But there are obvious areas of my life where now through practice and staying on the path of what's wrong, I've sort of learned to see it and not beat myself up, not as much or even not for as long.
Yeah. Yeah. So if there was one message or a piece of advice that you would want our listeners to walk away with from this conversation today, what would that be?
I would say whatever you do, wherever you go, be your own mediator in terms of your self-talk. Show non-judgment. How can you move your self-talk from what's wrong to what's strong?
Love that.
Because, when we are in what's wrong mode and we're thinking about ourselves and analyzing a situation, that's really that overthinking and worry mode. But when we can look at it in terms of what's strong, then that's more in reflection and opportunity for personal growth.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. I've got 4 lightning round questions that I'm going to go bam, bam, and just throw them at you. And you're just going to magically have answers for them. You ready?
Yes. No.
They're really simple, I promise. Okay.
Okay. I haven't had my coffee yet, just to put that forward.
Oh, she has not had her coffee yet, folks. That's brave. That's brave. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Oh, okay. Good. What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Watching a really funny or stupid comedy or even a romantic comedy or even a Christmas movie, a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Like
that's
the cheesy ones?
That I sometimes feel like disgusted with myself after I've watched it.
You're like, that was
But
such bad acting, but they got paid to do it. And I might be like, this could be my plan C in life.
Yeah, but that's one thing to help boost that sort of what's strong and just happy sort of vibe.
I love it.
After.
What is the best advice you have ever been given?
I think it would be, have I accepted the situation?
That's a good one.
Because that's led me, I guess, to realize that I haven't. And how can I move into acceptance?
Fair. Oh, that's a really good one. Have I accepted the situation? Because sometimes it just is what it is. That's a fair one.
What am I doing if I am accepting, or what would I be doing if I was accepting?
Yeah, that's deep. It's a deep piece of advice somebody gave you. Okay.
Yeah.
If you could keep one habit for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, it would have to be the meditation.
Meditation. Okay. And if you're on an island and you can only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Oh,
it's just one. You can't eat anything else. It has to be
island food, or it can be
anything
sort of
you want. Like my answer is pizza for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard.
I know.
I would probably go to something with carbohydrates like a lasagna.
It's just breakfast, lunch, and supper eating our lasagna.
Yeah.
Awesome. It was great getting to know you, learning more about your book, about the flow in which you run your business. And if folks want to get in touch with you, where is your favorite platform for them to connect with you?
Probably Instagram.
Awesome. So we'll put all of your links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. It was lovely connecting with you and sharing.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for listening to the Happy Stack podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra happiness in their life. Let's keep stacking those wins together. See you next time.